The girl didn't look scared at first, just confused, holding the inhaler up like it weighed more than she did. Her breath rasped in the cold morning air, shallow and fast. Across the park, the biker's son knelt in the grass, hands on his knees, fighting for breath he couldn't pull in. People froze. No one moved. But the little girl did, quiet, deliberate, like she already knew how it felt to be helpless. Before we start the story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel and don't forget to hit the hype button. Hollow Ridge, Montana didn't wake up fast. The mornings were slow, like the town needed a moment before deciding whether it could handle another day. 7-year-old Emma Tate sat alone on the cracked curb outside the faded apartment block, tracing circles in the dust with the toe of her sneaker. Her backpack rested beside her, light enough to make you wonder if there was anything inside it besides crayons and the inhaler she guarded like treasure. Her mother had already left for the diner shift, rushing out with a kiss pressed to Emma's hair and the same promise she made every morning. "I'll be home on time today." Emma always nodded. She never asked how many times grown-ups were allowed to break promises before they stopped counting dot across the street. The park stirred awake. Kids drifted in for early soccer practice. A few parents carried travel mugs steaming in the cool air. Emma watched quietly, the way children do when life has taught them not to take up too much space. Then she saw the Harley. A single black bike rounded the corner. Engine low and steady, the kind of rumble you felt in your ribs before you heard it. Emma sat up. She recognized that sound. The Hells Angels had rolled through Hollow Ridge twice this year, once for a charity ride, once for a funeral. Both times the town held its breath. But today there was only one rider, and behind him, wobbling slightly on a smaller dirt bike, was a boy about Emma's age. The man on the Harley parked near the playground, boots planting in the gravel with a slow, practiced steadiness. He didn't remove his helmet right away, just scanned the area like someone checking exits without meaning to. Then he glanced back at the boy trailing behind him. "Easy, Finn," he called, voice gravelly but gentle. Finn nodded, but Emma noticed his hands shaking as he cut his dirt bike's engine. His breathing was too fast, not panic-strained. Hollow, like his chest, couldn't decide whether to hold air or collapse. The man finally took off his helmet. He wasn't terrifying like the stories said bikers were. His beard was trimmed, streaked with gray. His eyes carried something tired, something that made him look older than he probably was. The patches on his vest caught the early sun. Heartland Chapter. Hells Angels Hollow Ridge Support. Sia read, he wasn't just passing through. He belonged here. Emma didn't mean to stare, but the man caught her anyway. Instead of scowling, he gave a small nod, the kind adults give when they see a kid who's more observant than she should be. Finn tried to follow him toward the benches, but stumbled halfway there. One hand went to his chest. The man turned instantly. "Buddy? Talk to me." Finn shook his head. His breaths came sharp, fast, desperate, and Emma recognized the sound. She'd made that sound too many times. Emma froze for half a heartbeat, then scrambled to her feet. Kids nearby backed away, unsure and nervous. Parents hesitated, whispering, watching the biker instead of the boy who couldn't breathe. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they didn't know what to do. Emma did. Her small fingers wrapped around the inhaler in her backpack before she even realized she'd moved. She ran across the grass, sneakers slapping the cold ground, heart pounding against her ribs. The biker knelt beside his son, one big hand on Finn's back. "Come on, kiddo. Slow it down. Look at me. Eyes here. Finn." His voice was calm, but fear trembled behind it. Emma recognized that too. Her mother sounded like that whenever Emma's chest. tightened in the middle of the night. Finn tried to inhale. Again. Failed. His lips pulled tight. Emma slid to her knees beside them. "I have one," she whispered, holding the inhaler out with both hands. "It works fast." The biker looked at her, really looked. Confusion flickered across his face, then something else. Desperation. Hope. He didn't ask questions. Didn't hesitate. He took the inhaler like it was a holy thing, pressed it to Finn's lips, steadied his shaking shoulders. "Breathe with me," the man murmured. Nice and slow. Emma watched, silent, praying. Palms sweating. Finn inhaled. Once, twice, a third time. His entire body loosened, and the biker's shoulders collapsed with relief. Finn leaned into his father's side, chest rising slow and steady now. His face was still pale, but the panic had drained out. Emma held her breath, waiting for the moment adults remembered she wasn't part of their world and sent her away. Instead, the biker turned to her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," she said softly, fingers twisting in her sleeve. He exhaled like he'd been holding the question in his lungs. "Emma, you saved my boy." She shook her head. It was just an inhaler. He stared at her, stunned by the casualness. That wasn't just anything. Finn lifted his head weakly. His eyes, blue and still shiny with leftover fear, met hers. "Thank you," he whispered. No one had ever looked at her like that before. Like she mattered. Like she'd done something important. The man held out his hand. "I'm Duke." Emma didn't take it. She wasn't scared, just unsure if it was allowed. But Duke didn't pull back, just lowered his big hand gently until it rested on the grass between them. "Is that inhaler yours?" he asked. She nodded. "Do you have another one?" She hesitated. He seemed to understand before she answered. "Emma, do you have anyone who takes care of that for you?" Her silence was all the answer he needed. The morning sun had climbed higher now, warming the corner of the park where the three of them sat. Duke shifted, looking at Emma with a steady focus that wasn't heavy, just honest. The kind of attention she wasn't used to. He wasn't judging her. He was trying to understand. "Where's your mom today?" he asked quietly. "At work," she said. "The diner on Pine Road. And your dad?" She didn't answer. Duke didn't push. Finn tugged his father's vest weakly. "Dad, she gave me her medicine." Duke's jaw tightened. He turned to Emma. "I need to know something, honey. When was the last time you had a full inhaler?" She looked at the ground. "A while. How long is a while?" Emma shrugged. "It still works, mostly. I save it for bad days." Duke closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them, something new lived there, something painful, like he was remembering a hurt he didn't talk about. "Emma, my son could have died today." She nodded. "I know, but you chose to help him instead of yourself." She didn't know what to say. She just looked at Finn, who still clung to his father's vest. Duke swallowed hard. "Sweetheart, that's not something people forget." He didn't say the next part out loud, but he thought it. Not something bikers forget either. Duke didn't leave the park right away. He kept glancing at Emma like she might disappear if he looked away too long. Finn rested against him, still recovering, small breaths evening out slowly. Emma sat a few feet from them, tugging the loose thread on her sleeve, unsure if she was allowed to stay or supposed to run. "Emma," Duke finally said, "you got school today?" She nodded. "Starts at 8. I go by myself. You walk alone?" Another nod. Duke rubbed his jaw. He looked like a man weighing something heavy. A choice, a memory. His fingers tapped against the ground, a restless, nervous rhythm bikers weren't known for. "Listen," he said softly. "I'm talking Finn home, getting him checked. But can you meet me back here tomorrow morning? Same time." Emma's head shot up. Am I in trouble? Duke blinked, pained. No. God, no. You saved my kid. She studied him, trying to understand why someone like him, a man with steel in his voice and leather on his back, would want to see her again. Why? She whispered. Duke held her gaze, steady and gentle. Because nobody should have to ration air, sweetheart. Not my boy. Not you. Emma didn't know what that meant, but Duke did, and he'd already decided what tomorrow would bring. Emma didn't tell her mother what happened. Not because she wanted secrets, because her mother came home exhausted, smelling of grease and burnt coffee, shoulders sagging. She cooked, she cleaned, she apologized for things she couldn't fix. Emma learned early not to add more weight to tired backs. So she went to bed with the window cracked open, letting the cool Montana evening drift in. She fell asleep with the inhaler clutched against her chest, the same way she had since she was 5. She woke before sunrise. Her chest felt tight, not an attack. Just the usual reminder that her lungs weren't as strong as other kids. She used one careful puff, one less for the future, one less comfort. She slipped it back into her backpack and headed out, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. Hollow Ridge was quiet. Streetlights buzzed. A stray dog trotted across the road. Emma walked the whole mile to the park, wondering if Duke would actually come back, or if she had imagined. The warmth in his voice. She stepped onto the frost-dusted grass. She didn't have to wonder long. A motorcycle's low growl rolled through the empty. Morning. Not one bike. 300. They came in slow. Steady formation engines rumbling like distant thunder, waking the whole town. Chrome caught the early light. Leather vests flashed red and white patches. Rows of helmets moved as one. It was the biggest gathering Hollow Ridge had ever seen. Emma froze. It wasn't fear. It was disbelief. The first bike stopped in a half-moon shape around the playground. Then the next layer. Then another. Engines cut one by one until silence fell heavy. Expectant silence broken only by the crunch of boots on frozen grass. Duke stepped forward. He wasn't wearing his helmet now. His face was clearer in the morning light, the lines around his eyes deeper, the gray in his beard softer. Finn stood beside him, bundled in a jacket 2 sizes too big, but smiling. Emma clutched her backpack straps. Morning, Duke said, voice low but carrying across the still air. She looked at the crowd behind him. Each biker stood tall, hands clasped in front or resting at their sides. Not intimidating, not hostile, just present. Her voice barely came out. Why? Why are there so many? Finn nudged his father, whispering something. Duke smiled gently. Because word travels fast in our world. And what you did? That matters to us. Emma stepped closer, boots sinking into cold grass. She kept her hands tight at her sides, fighting the instinct to shrink. Duke crouched a little so they were eye level. You saved my son, he said. And you gave him something you needed for yourself. We don't overlook that. Emma's eyes drifted to Finn. He offered a small wave, shy but grateful. Duke reached into his vest and pulled out a small box, a new inhaler, still sealed. Not a refill. A brand new one. Emma's breath caught. For you, Duke said. No strings. No favors owed. I can't take this. You already did more than enough to earn it. Her fingers hovered, scared to touch something that felt too big for her world. Duke didn't push. He just waited. Patience wasn't something adults usually had with her. When she finally took it, the box trembled in her hands. A murmur rippled through the crowd of bikers, not loud, not overwhelming. Just a soft wave of approval. Duke stood. But that's not all. Emma blinked up at him. There's more? He nodded toward the sea of leather behind him. These folks came here because kids like you don't get forgotten on our watch. A tall rider stepped forward. His vest read, Sarge. His boots looked older than most of her teachers. He handed Duke a small envelope without a word and stepped back into formation. Duke offered it to Emma. She hesitated. What's that? Open it. Her fingers shook as she slid a nail under the flap. Inside was a folded paper. She pulled it out carefully, smoothing it open. A prescription voucher, approved, paid in full. No expiration. Unlimited refills for respiratory medication. Emma stared. This is expensive. Duke nodded. Not anymore. But why would you? Because you didn't think twice yesterday. Because you helped my son when grown men stood there frozen. Because someone should have helped you long before we showed up. Emma blinked hard, her throat tightening. Duke crouched again, softer this time. Sweetheart, do you know what happens when bikers hear about a kid who shares her last bit of air with someone else? She shook her head. They show up. He gestured behind him. 300 men stood steady in the cold morning, light, silent, respectful. Waiting. Not for thanks, not for praise, not waiting for her. Emma clutched the voucher to her chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. Duke didn't rush her. He let Emma stand there, clutching the voucher, absorbing the weight of being noticed, really noticed. Bikers shifted quietly behind him, breath fogging in the cold, hands tucked into pockets, patient as stone. She'd never had 3 people wait on her, let alone 300. Finn shuffled closer. Can I show her something, Dad? Duke nodded. Finn reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather patch, edges worn, stitching uneven. It showed a simple white feather. He held it out to Emma, palm open. What's that? She whispered. It's my good luck patch, Finn said. My dad gave it to me when I had my first attack. Says it means you're stronger than your worst day. Emma's eyes widened. You're giving it to me? Finn nodded, cheeks pink from the cold. You helped me breathe. That's better than luck. Duke swallowed like the words hit him somewhere deep. He stood straighter, voice thick. Finn doesn't give that patch to just anyone. Emma touched it like it might crumble. The leather was soft, warm from his pocket. Behind them, a biker called out, not loud. Just enough to carry? Atta girl? Another murmured, strong kid. For the first time, Emma didn't flinch at praise. She let herself believe it. Duke cleared his throat, glancing back at the rows of riders. There's one more thing we need to talk about. Emma stiffened. Did I do something wrong? No, he said quickly. You did something right. It's the rest of the world that's been wrong to you. She wasn't sure what that meant. Duke motioned for someone to bring a small metal case forward. A biker with thick arms and kind eyes carried it, handing it to Duke with care. This, Duke said, belongs to you now. Emma opened it slowly. Inside lay a medical ID tag bracelet engraved with her name, her condition, emergency steps, and a number, not a random number. Duke's number. Her breath stuttered. Why yours? So you don't have to be scared walking to school alone, Duke said. So someone always answers when you're in trouble. Emma looked down at the tag again. No one had ever put their number on anything for her. No one had ever prepared for her safety like this. I can't pay for this, she whispered. You already did. Duke's voice sank lower. You gave my son a future breath. Let us give you a few, too. Emma wiped her eyes quietly. She slipped the bracelet on at the edge of the park. Engines rumbled softly as more riders arrived, latecomers catching up. Curious locals drifting out of doorways to see what the noise was about. 300 had become closer to 3-50. Emma stepped back instinctively, overwhelmed by the size of the moment. Duke noticed immediately. He motioned for the bikers to spread out, giving her space instead of crowding her. They moved silently, respectfully, like men used to adjusting their presence for someone smaller. Finn tugged her sleeve. "Do you have breakfast yet?" Emma shook her head. "Not today." Finn looked up at his dad. "We should fix that." Duke smiled softly, then raised 2 fingers to one of the riders. A biker disappeared into the cluster and returned with a brown paper bag smelling of warm biscuits and honey butter. Duke handed it to Emma. "Eat," he said. "Kids think better on full stomachs." She opened it slowly, like she was expecting someone to snatch it back. No one did. She took a small bite. It melted. Her stomach tightened from the unfamiliar feeling of being fed before being asked what she could give in return. A biker in the second row muttered, "That kid's tougher than half the men I know." "Yeah," another agreed. "She stands like she's ready for anything." Emma didn't realize she was standing taller. Not until Duke noticed. The town sheriff finally arrived, siren off but lights flickering. Sheriff Langley stepped out with a slow, cautious posture the kind lawmen used when approaching a crowd they respected but didn't fully understand. The bikers parted just enough to let him through. No hostility. No show of force. Just acknowledgement. Langley nodded to Duke. "Heard you boys were making some noise." "Morning, Sheriff," Duke replied. "We're just taking care of something important." Langley looked at Emma. His expression softened. "Is this her?" Emma instinctively stepped back. Duke shifted subtly, placing himself between her and anything that might feel threatening, not aggressively, just protectively. "Easy," Langley said gently. "I ain't here to cause trouble." Duke crossed his arms. "She didn't do anything wrong. She's the reason my son's breathing." Langley's brows lifted. "That so?" Finn nodded shyly from behind his dad. The sheriff looked at the medical bracelet, then at the voucher in her hand, then at the line of bikers stretching across the park. "You know," he said quietly, "I grew up with some of these boys' dads. They weren't saints, but they weren't liars either. If they're standing with you, little miss, you must have done something real." Emma opened her mouth, trying to speak, but her voice broke. For once, that was okay. Duke spoke for her. "She shared her last inhaler puff with my boy," he said. "A child helping a child. We're just paying our debt." Sheriff Langley sighed softly. A man trying to weigh rules against humanity. "You riding back with her?" he asked Duke. "Walking," Duke corrected. "Kid's not getting to school alone again." Emma blinked. "You're coming with me?" Finn grinned. "We both are." The sheriff stepped aside. Town's safer when folks stick together. As they moved toward the sidewalk, the sea of bikes shifted behind them. Engines roared to life one by one, not loud, not chaotic, just a rolling wave of protection. Riders formed 2 lines, creating a corridor stretching from the park entrance to the crosswalk. Emma stared. What's happening?" Duke rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's an escort, sweetheart. For me. For someone who earned it." She swallowed hard, chest swelling with an emotion she didn't have a name for. A high-ranking rider called out, "Keep your heads up, boys." "She leads." The bikers tapped their chests in unison, 2 fingers over the heart. Emma walked forward, small steps slow and steady. Finn walked on her left. Duke walked on her right. 300 engines idled low, surrounding her with sound that felt like a shield. For the first time in her life, Emma felt untouchable. They walked slowly down Birchwood Lane, the pavement still damp from last night's frost. Emma's breath turned to little clouds in the air, but she didn't feel cold anymore. Finn kept glancing at her bracelet, like he wanted to make sure it hadn't magically vanished. Duke matched Emma's pace, unhurried, steady, giving her the feeling she deserved time, instead of being rushed through it. The line of motorcycles followed at a respectful distance, engines humming low like a heartbeat under the morning sky. Curtains parted in small houses. People stepped onto porches. A few rubbed their eyes, trying to understand why the quiet girl from Pine Road was walking with two angels, and an entire convoy behind her. Emma kept touching the new inhaler in her pocket, not checking for it, reassuring herself it wasn't a dream. Finn bumped her elbow lightly. "Does your chest hurt today?" She shook her head. "Not right now. You can tell us if it does." "Use—" The word made her stumble a step. Duke steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "You good?" Emma nodded, throat tight. "Why are you helping me?" Duke didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her like he remembered another kid with the same scared eyes. And that kid wasn't alive anymore. They reached the old bridge that crossed over Hollow Creek. Water rushed below, icy and fast. Duke paused, resting one hand on the railing, his breath turning white in the morning air. "Emma," he said quietly, "there's something you should know." Finn leaned against the rail, listening. Duke's voice softened in a way Emma had never heard from a grown man. "I had a daughter once. Her name was Paige." Emma waited, small fingers curling around the cold metal. "She had asthma too," he continued. "Worse than Finn's. We kept up with treatments, did everything right. But one night the power went out during a storm. Her machine failed. We didn't get to her fast enough." Emma's heart clenched. Finn looked down, jaw tight. He'd heard this story before. Duke kept his eyes on the rushing creek. "Every day after that, I swore I'd never let another kid fight for air alone. Doesn't matter whose kid they are." Emma stood silent for a long moment. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't old enough to understand the full weight of grief, but she understood loss. She understood fear. She understood the way Duke's voice cracked on his daughter's name. She reached out, touching his sleeve gently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Duke nodded once, the motion small but full of pain. "And that," he said softly, "is why you'll never walk alone again." They continued toward the school, where kids were already gathering near the entrance. Backpacks bounced. Voices carried. A basketball thumped somewhere. Ordinary morning noises, yet none of it felt ordinary, with 300 bikers lining the street behind her. Most kids stared. A few whispered. One boy snickered. Why she got an army with her. Duke heard it. His head turned slowly, not threatening, just enough to make the boy instantly regret speaking. Finn stepped forward first. "She saved my life," Finn said simply. "What did you do today?" The boy shut his mouth. Emma's cheeks burned, but not from embarrassment, something closer to pride. She wasn't used to anyone defending her. She wasn't used to being worth defending. A teacher emerged from the doors, stunned into silence by the parked motorcycles stretching down the road. She approached cautiously. "Emma, is everything all right?" Emma looked at Duke, unsure if she was allowed to explain. Duke nodded. "Go on." She took a breath. "I shared my inhaler yesterday with someone who needed it, and they came to say thank you." The teacher blinked. "All of them?" Duke answered, voice steady. "Every one." The teacher swallowed. "Emma, you go on inside. I'll make sure your morning is smooth." Smooth. For once, Emma believed it. Duke walked her to the school doors. Not hovering, not forcing, just present, solid and reassuring. Finn stood on her other side, fidgeting with the empty spot where his good luck patch used to be. Emma touched the patch now clipped to her backpack strap. "Do you want it back?" she asked. Finn shook his head firmly. "No, you need it more." She didn't argue. She understood what it meant. Duke knelt one last time to her level. Emma, that bracelet? That number? You call it for anything. I don't care if it's a big thing or a small thing. You call. She nodded. I mean it, he added. If someone scares you, if you feel sick, if you need a ride, if your mom runs late, anything. Emma's eyes brimmed. No one's ever said that to me. Duke swallowed hard. Then it's about damn time someone did. She wrapped her small arms around him. Duke froze for a second, like he hadn't expected it, then returned the hug with a gentleness that didn't match the size of his hands. When she pulled away, he stood, clearing his throat. All right, sweetheart. Go learn something. Emma walked inside. Every biker outside tapped 2 fingers over their heart as she did .respect, .honor, .gratitude, .Emma stopped just inside the doors and looked back through the glass. Duke and Finn were still there. The bikes were still there. The entire street looked like a protective wall built just for her. Something inside her, something small, tightly folded, forgotten opened. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. For the first time, she felt protected. Finn waved through the window. Duke tipped his chin in a quiet promise. We're here. We're not going anywhere. The engines fired up one by one as the riders began to peel away. But not before they watched her walk safely into her classroom, backpack bouncing gently against her new patch. Her teacher placed a hand on her shoulder. Emma, are those men really here for you? Emma nodded, inhaler tucked securely in her pocket. They're my friends. Outside, 300 bikes thundered down Birchwood Lane. Not in chaos, but in formation, like guardians returning to their world after delivering something precious. Emma took her seat, breathing steady. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't scared of the next breath, because she finally knew, if it ever failed her again, 300 engines would come roaring back. Some people are born into protection. Others earn it with a single act of courage. Emma gave her last breath to save another, and an entire brotherhood answered. If this story touched you, subscribe, like, and join our family for more stories of loyalty, courage, and heart.